Hey there! Just had a big meal, big KFC, so feeling a little bit sleepy at the moment, so you have to bear with me. But I've been working on the first proper part of this Warhammer Fantasy series, and I suppose the first thing to talk about is the Age of Sigmar. Just get this out of the way very quickly. To me, sort of Warhammer Fantasy's dead now. I'm not going to be continuing with it. They've completely screwed it up, and I feel like all the money I've spent is wasted, and that's all I've really got to say about it. But it doesn't mean, in fact, it's almost more important to get down the proper lore of Warhammer Fantasy, because we're going to get a load of new players that are going to think that that is the game. So, if anything, this is more important. Anyway, so, basically, what I want to do is start at the very beginning and work the way through the timeline of the lore. And to do that, I'm using all those novels that I showed you, and the internet sometimes, and just trying to build up as close a picture as possible. So, this episode is going to be about the time before the old ones. So we're talking right back at the very beginning, because when the old ones came, they created all the different races and basically set up the old world as we know it. But this is before that, and this episode mainly focuses on dragons. I was hoping to create an episode about dragons, dragon ogres, and maybe even get to the old ones and the lizard men. But as I started doing more and more research, and I have done research. This is a page of research, double-sided research, lots of notes and research. So, done lots of research. I keep saying research. There was so much to talk about with purely dragons that I'm just going to make this video about them. And I'm bringing the dragon ogres a little bit, but I'm going to make a separate video for them as well. So anyway, this is my first episode about dragons. I hope you enjoy. So, we're starting this adventure from the very beginning, before the old ones even came to the old world. And it seems the only information we have directly referring to this period that I'm aware of comes from a small passage in the 8th edition rulebook. It talks about how initially the world was covered in ice and populated by, it seems, reptilian creatures. So the base life forms that evolved naturally on the Warhammer world were reptilian. The only true intelligent life that I'm aware of are the dragons and the Shaggoths. It kind of doesn't make sense, as reptiles are cold-blooded, and that would mean the dragons and the Shaggoths are cold-blooded too. So you would have thought that they would need heat to warm up their bodies. However, fantasy. It appears that in the Warhammer world that it's the complete opposite, as they go on to say that when the old ones come and start heating up the world, the dragons were not too happy about it, and many of the greatest ones went underground to sleep in the dark cold. Again, don't know why this is, as you would have thought the greatest of beings would be able to resist things like this longer than the weakest would. But maybe it's down to smaller creatures being able to regulate their body temperature more easily, but who knows. Anyway, boring. In terms of fluff, however, it does kind of make sense, as if the old world was originally populated by reptiles, then I assume the old ones would start their crazy experiments with the native fauna, hence the lizard men. But we're getting way off topic, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's forget the old ones for the moment and focus on the native sentient creatures, starting with the Warhammer Dragons. Now, while what I've just covered may be the only direct information we have, we can, however, use some of the Black Library novels and the lovely internet to learn what we can of these creatures and imagine a world purely populated by them as one of the dominant species. Now, while the internet's lovely, and it is lovely, it can also be a little bit wrong. According to the Warhammer Fantasy Wiki, the dragons are as long-lived as the High Elves. However, that goes against everything we've just been talking about, and I'm going to go with the books. And if we presume that the old world, the Warhammer Fantasy world's evolution is similar to our own before the old ones came and started meddling, which I think is a pretty grounded assumption as the environment itself is pretty similar, then we can only assume that the dragons predated the elves by probably millions of years. By the way, here's a picture of a dragon, just in case you didn't know what a dragon looked like. And here is a picture of a shaggoth. Shaggoth sounds quite rude, in a way. Looking back at the wiki page with a little bit less faith, it goes on to talk about the special connection that the dragons have with the High Elves. I'll get to this in a later video as it's a little further ahead in the timeline, but it must be said that pretty much all of the information I've seen on dragons from the novels comes from novels about the High Elves. It's kind of annoying, really, as I would love to see a novel set in the Warhammer world before the coming of the old ones. But it really will not happen, especially after recent events. Why? What we can do, however, is build up a picture of their character, culture and extent of their sort of sentience from the later information that we have, and therefore speculate on what came before. It then goes on to talk about how most of the dragons then went to live in Ulthuan, which we can ignore for the moment, and then goes on about the different types of dragons. Now, this is really important as it's directly related to the dragon's culture, in that they kind of have a class system, although I use that term very loosely. So basically, we have three different types of dragons. We've got the sun dragon, we've got the moon dragon, and we've got the star dragon. And the sun dragons being the youngest, the weakest, but the most fiery, with the most fiery temperament. The star dragons being the oldest, mightiest, yet ultimately laziest. And the moon dragons being somewhere in the middle. Unfortunately for the sun dragons, being the youngest, they're classified as being born after the time of Anarion, so they don't really come into this video. So what we have left are the moon dragons and the star dragons, and they would be living in this ancient time, with the moon dragons being the weaker but more active sort, and the star dragons being the incredibly powerful, lazy sods. They live underground in deep dark caverns, probably all over the world at this point. They have enemies in the Shaggoths that I'll talk about in the next video. But how intelligent are they? Many Warhammer fans already know the answer to this, but let's explore it anyway, and let's do that through the novels, basically looking for examples. So for this, I've chosen two books. These are the books. One of them is called Master of Dragons, the other one is called The Curse of the Phoenix Crown. I do have the whole set with the Great Betrayal coming first, but it just seems to have gone walkabouts lately, and I always seem to be losing things. Do you get that? It just like put something down and then you can never find it again. Anyway, but these two will give us a clear picture. These books are from the Time of Legend series, which we will be exploring a lot in future videos. They're a really important set of books. I don't want to spoil too much of the books. Read them if you want to, don't if you don't. They're okay, those two. They're not the best out of... there's much better Black Library books. But I would just like to read a few passages from them. Basically, in this first passage, all you really need to know is that there's this Caledonian high elf hero called Imladric, and he rides a dragon called Drawcane, I think it was. I'll check in a sec, but I think it was Drawcane. And in this passage, it's just the two of them together talking. You are angry. Drawcane's mind song echoed in Imladric's head like one of his own thoughts. Not angry, Imladric returned. Weary. Weary? I have borne you aloft 100 leagues, Drawcane snorted, sending flecks of smouldering ash cascading over his immense shoulders. I am weary, you are angry. You rage against your brother who commands you. Ah, you read my thoughts now. I do not need to. This anger is a waste. It serves no purpose. Imladric shifted in the saddle. After hours of flight, his limbs were tight and his muscles raw. The ocean glittered below him, a shallow curve extending in all directions, glossy with reflected sunlight. Soon the sun would begin to dip, descending in golds and reds towards the horizon, but for the moment the world looked pristine, awash with light, just as it must have done in the dawn following creation. My brother shows disrespect, mind sank Imladric. To you, Great One, he does not understand you. How many are left who truly understand? Callum Talen, do not judge him for that. This next one is a conversation between an elven mage called Leandra and her mount Vranesh. What is it like? Asked Leandra, desperate to keep speaking as if that alone could somehow postpone the moment. We are there as we were before you entered the world, sang Vranesh. Before the Shantar came to tutor you, before strife came from the outer dark. The eldest of us remember. I will see them again, the names of legend. Leandra inhaled deeply, breathing in the remnants of Vranesh's scent. The ember-charred musk was weaker, tinged with the hot stink of blood. The dragon was covered in it, its scales sticky and matte with clogged dust. The land they had crashed into was a desolate one, sun-hardened plains of baked earth and sparse brush hills. The heat was oppressive, as if sunk into the air like dying cloth. Leandra had little idea where they were, for the long hours of pursuit, all that had mattered was vengeance. Running down the Drucky Witch, at least that had been achieved. Vranesh's voice entered her mind again then, reading her thoughts. She is not dead. I saw her hit the water. The abomination, yes, sang Vranesh, not the rider. You are sure? I can still hear her. So we can see from this that dragons have a language that to the ears of the elves, who were able to find a way to communicate with them, sounds like a song, and is thus called dragon song. So the main thing I take from this is that dragons are intelligent creatures on the same level of consciousness as any human or elf. They must therefore be perfectly capable of creating their own civilizations with all that entails. So, what do we know? Basically, there are three main points to take from this. Dragons are intelligent creatures. They implement a kind of class system based on age, and they have an enemy in the Shaggoths and Dragon Ogres, who we'll get to in a later video. but who for now we can say are also intelligent creatures in their own, with their own type of civilization. So let's fantasize a bit. The last part of this video is complete speculation and should be taken with a pinch of salt. It's just the imagination of a guy who's into this kind of fantasy and that I hope has a sort of feel for the way the patterns in the story tend to work. So, story time. Now, I'm no novelist, but I've given it a little go just so that we can imagine what the world would have been like at this time. So, for story time, the sunglasses come off. Now, yes. Picture a world almost completely covered in ice. Much like our own last ice age, there are many different reptilian creatures that have adapted to this world, and they live their lives mainly running on instinct, much like our own animals. Now, this is where things get a little different. In this world, there are two different dominant species that have managed to naturally evolve to the point of intelligent life, much like our own intelligence. Massive reptilian creatures, the dragons and the dragon ogres. The dragons live in great underground caverns where in the cold climate they socialise, love, hate, have political nous and communicate much like us between themselves. However, at this time, being in the Warhammer world, of course, they are at war. A great war. The king of the dragon ogres, the greatest Shaggoth to ever live, is on the march, and he has an army 500,000 strong that is invading dragon territory. Wherever they go, devastation follows, and the outermost dragon caverns have been overrun. Many dragons have been killed, their millions of years of existence come to a quick and bloody end. Word gets back to the greatest of dragon cavern cities, and the very oldest and most powerful star dragon roars the orders for war. After much discussion and strategizing at the War Council, they come up with a battle plan to use their advantage of their wings, sending the majority of their army to attack the enemy head-on, keeping to the skies and using their fire, with moon dragons on the front line and star dragon generals keeping back to observe and then fight where they are most needed, mainly focusing on the Shaggoths. However, this is merely a distraction. They also send a second, smaller task force high above the clouds, unobserved, to fly behind the enemy lines. This force is led by the greatest of the star dragons. Once they get there, they have but one task: to seek out the Shaggoth king and eliminate him. If he falls, the enemy will crumble. A great battle ensues. 1 million giant reptiles at war. Many great heroes are killed, but the plan is a success. The greatest dragon and the Shaggoth king meet in the thick of the action. Their fight is so epic that later legends will be told of it. It goes back and forth, but eventually the Star Dragon is able to get a tight hold on the Shaggoth and, covered in blood, with shredded wings, manages to make his way high into the sky, where he drops the Shaggoth, who falls to his death. Panic surges through the Dragon Ogre ranks, and as planned, they scatter into the icy wilderness. The battle is won. 3 days later, the dragons are still deep in celebration over their great victory, yet deeply saddened from the losses. As the dead are buried and songs are sang, a great light appears in the sky. As all faces, dragon faces, turn to the heavens, something appears, something never seen before. Thank you so much for watching my ramblings. I was hoping to reach the lizard men in this video, like I say, but there is so much information out there that I just wanted to dedicate this video to dragons. The next video will be on the dragon ogres. I don't think there's as much information about them, so it'll probably be shorter, and then we can get on to the old ones and what their effect on the world, then get on to the how the order of the race is being created, and the sort of legendary stories of those elder days. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.